Trucks.
Trucks.
Hey.
Who's that? Who's in the truck?
Yeah, it's more than two people again.
Hi, I'm Joon-ho. It's an honor to be here inside the truck. On the Trucktrain.
Welcome aboard the Trucktrain, my friend.
Yeah. Woo, woo.
Today's humble task is taking office paper to
Swansea.
Swansea. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it. I called it Swansea earlier.
Yeah, because Josh is real British. He's the most British one there is.
I'm literally British.
British place names, man, like Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
When you drop like half of those syllables.
I'm pretty sure that would definitely be a sure at the end.
There's a 5-syllable word that is pronounced Chumsley.
Ooh.
And whether it can be said, or just Chumley, I think, and whether it can be said to be a 5-syllable word at that point is open to debate. But there are 5 distinct phonemes in there at the very least. Oh
man. Do you know about, there's a town in Sweden that's spelled Gothenburg and pronounced Göteborg.
Oh, that's very nice. You
Yeah.
can do that again.
Göteborg.
Oh.
Now, I don't have a good Swedish accent, so that's just me. That's just a Joon-ho accent.
That's more accurate than it would have been, I think, if either of the rest of us had tried it. So, our subject for today is a movie that Jono recommended to us. We've had it recommended to us by a couple of other people. Speeding Offense, right off the block, very nice.
I do not care about speeding offenses anymore. Tsukasa doing business.
Yeah, no. We have more money than Jesus at this point, so it's okay. We have so many euros, you guys.
Jesus gave away all his money, dudes.
We have more money than Jesus would have been had he been handled by a competent marketing team. But
this movie is called Snowpiercer.
Snowpiercer, ladies and gentlemen.
Snowpiercer.
We might. I don't know exactly how we're going to handle this. Like, we're probably going to heavily synopsize this thing. I bet we're going to spoil the balls off this thing.
We have to.
There's
no way.
Okay.
There's no way to have the discussion. No.
You go.
There's no way to have the discussion that I want to have without spoiling it.
We're going to go full spoiler, so I'm just going to say, like,
skip to the time on your screen.
That'll be like the end of the episode, maybe,
or
not.
We might fit in something else to talk about. We'll see.
But no, for real, you guys should go see Snowpiercer.
See it.
Go to your local art house.
It's the most bonkers thing I've ever seen. You can find it on the internet. Not that I endorse that.
Yeah.
But you can. Just if you're that kind of person.
Because it was released in its native Korea a year ago, I believe.
Yeah.
So, Jono, you said that this movie
changed your outlook
on cinema generally.
Yes.
Would you care to explain why?
We're very curious about the before and after.
So, when I was 17, I had a shitty job at Hollywood Video. Back in the days when there were video stores and people would bring in VHS tapes and they never rewound them, ever. So, ever since that time, I've kind of hated movies. That job really just exposed me to the worst of movie culture and like American movie going tastes. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to use my free movie rental privileges because I just don't even care for movies as an art form anymore at this point. And so when I didn't hate movies, I was kind of indifferent to them, right? Like generally, like people were going into movies and coming out like describing this amazing life-changing experience they had, like that thing that was going around Tumblr a while back where people would name the 10 movies that like defined who they are as a person, and I'm like, wow, I'm kind of jealous because the best a movie ever does for me is basically like, oh, I didn't hate that wasn't terrible.
And this is movie specific. It doesn't apply to TV series or original video adaptations or...
No, man, I love the OVAs. I don't know. I feel like you can do a lot more character development in a series or a miniseries than you can do in a movie. And so many movies, especially in the last decade, are just so samey and so... everything's an adaptation or a prequel or a remake or a reboot or whatever, and it's all...
As is this movie.
It's an adaptation of a French comic book called Transpersonnage.
I'm glad you know that.
I ordered a copy, so...
Oh, yeah?
You can report it to us on that. Yeah. But continue, please.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I feel like this is the first movie in as long as I've been an adult, where I'm actually like, I liked it enough that I'm going around telling other people to see it, and I'm like writing about it on Tumblr and like following the fandom tags, and I'm like, I actually want to seek out and watch the other movies made by this director,
yes.
which is a very strange new feeling for me. I'm like, a movie can actually be good and not just, not be bad.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you've had that realization, because I wholly agree that movies can be good.
Yeah.
I also agree that movies can be good. I think that their strengths as a general matter are not the same strengths that you get from a series or miniseries.
Right.
It's that a movie tends to lean a lot more heavily on its atmosphere.
It's a lot like the novel versus the short story in many ways.
Yeah. I should actually amend what I said. I was making it more black and white than it really is, because I always loved Miyazaki movies and Pixar movies, but I kind of had those in a separate category. I'm like, a non-animated movie can be good.
Well, this was almost an anime.
It was almost an anime, yeah.
I would say that it's not un-anime, this movie.
Yeah, but it's there are very few movies that are science fiction movies that have actual, like, socially relevant thematic content, and then that do it successfully in a way that's both entertaining and meaningful. It's a very small club. And like, if a movie's not science fictional or doesn't involve Muppets or martial arts in some way, then I'm basically not interested in seeing it. But I don't like a movie that just doesn't have anything to say and is just a bunch of like explosions or whatever. So the intersection of those two categories is pretty small.
Speaking of which, there was a gloriously inaccurate pull quote on the like the stand-up ad for Snowpiercer that we saw as we were going into the theater. This is the movie that Transformers wanted to be.
Wait,
it said.
Transformers didn't want to be this movie.
That is correct. It is the single wrongest piece of advertising that I think I've ever seen.
No.
But that's how you get people to see a weird ass movie like this.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Yes.
So let me get into what Josh and my reactions were to seeing this movie. We came in vaguely hopeful.
Vaguely hopeful, yes.
Vaguely hopeful. And we came out unable to believe what we had seen.
Yeah.
On a certain level.
It was absolutely... This movie has got to be the most bonkers thing I've seen in years.
Yes. I think that it's a gift to critics in that...
God, it has 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. Can you believe that?
I can't. But it's like there is I would say, like, this movie is both literally and figuratively a glorious train wreck, which is like
entire review in train pun, right?
I wish we were playing Train Simulator,
which exists, but it's not nearly as fun.
Yeah, and I don't know how to play it. Moreover,
from the first 10 minutes.
Quick synopsis of this movie. Humanity managed to kill the world, ending it in ice.
Yeah, they did this by overcompensating for global warming.
Yeah, by
the chemical.
They wrecked the balance.
Yeah.
The delicate ecosystem of the world, as above, so below. The delicate ecosystem of the world was wrecked by overactive altruism and do-gooding. And so all that remains of humanity is one wacky train.
It's called the Rattling Arc, weirdly. It's not even called the Snowpiercer.
But it pierces the snow.
It does pierce the snow.
The Rattling Arc, which goes eternally through the snow. I don't know why I'm doing this, because nobody who hasn't seen the movie will be continuing. Well, maybe people who have no interest in seeing it. But anyway, there's a rigid class system on board this train, because, as this movie is at pains to remind us, humanity is base and corrupt, but perhaps of necessity. And
the people toward the front of the train are
it's like Morlocks and what's the ones that aren't Morlocks, Jonah?
Eloy.
Eloy.
Thank you. Thank you both
the
for
people
knowing
toward the front
that.
of the train live in luxury, while the people in the back of the train are so starved that they eat cockroach blocks and resort to cannibalism before the cockroach blocks are introduced.
Indeed, cockroach blocks.
Yeah, they're called protein blocks.
They look like natto, essentially.
They're made of cockroaches.
They look
you learned
nothing
this
like natto. What are you talking about? They look like coffee jelly. Is what they look.
Yes,
like.
they look like tea jelly. You're absolutely correct. They may in fact literally be tea jelly.
Yeah. So the plot begins when mysterious letters, which filter from the front of the train, are smuggled back inside of food.
I don't know if we need to break down the plot.
A little bit. Let's just do a little bit here.
Okay, go.
They basically incite a rebellion, and the rebellion follows the main character, who is Sad Captain America.
Yes.
And I'll refuse to call him anything else.
I would like to call him Keanu Reeves in The Matrix 2. Continue.
I didn't realize he was Captain America until Stu pointed it out to me afterwards.
Yeah.
He looks a lot more like Keanu Reeves than he does like Captain America in this movie.
He does have a bit of a Keanu Reeves thing going on.
But anyway.
But yes, Sad Captain America basically leads this rebellion toward the front of the train. It's a bunch of fight scenes toward the front of the train, and he's very much a video game protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
He's essentially characterized by the fact that he is the best at fighting, and everyone insists that he's their leader, and the extent of his leadership is, let's go toward the front of the train.
Yes, we must go in this direction. This movie is one of the most video gamey movies that I've ever seen, which is basically always a plus. Josh and I are generally pretty excited about video game storytelling tropes making their way into other forms of expression.
Yeah.
There is a movie that I would like to recommend to you.
Sure.
And which I would recommend to everybody, called The Raid Redemption. Which is a Indonesian film. It's essentially a martial arts movie, but it is eerily similar to this movie in a lot of ways, both in the starting from one end of the linear structure and going to the other end. The boss, there are many bosses, and the big boss is not what he seems, and you go from fists to melee weapons to guns. Oh, except in that movie you go from guns to melee weapons to fists. But it's still the movie is sort of defined in its arc by how the people are killing each other.
Yeah.
From moment to moment, and there's also the bystanders, the civilians, which is a really important part of the atmosphere of both of these movies, is that they're always just onlookers everywhere, making it feel very realistic. And the movie has so many antecedents. The train thing and the way that's the designer of the train, that is 100% BioShock.
Yeah. The improbable city that expresses a class problem.
Even down to the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
The Wilford.
Yeah, Wilford, the visionary,
the big
creator
W's
of the city.
Yeah.
And the way the whole place represents his ideology.
The way I think both of our favorite parts of the movie, which is the part the part which begins with their capturing the lady with the dentures and ends with the egg incident.
Oh yes. Minister Mason is her character.
Yes, I think that is both my and Josh's favorite stretch of the film.
Probably.
And that part is incredibly valvy, to my mind at least.
In what way?
I mean, I've been replaying Portal lately, but
it is very much here's the character who's going to come with you through this bizarre environment and tell you about it.
Yeah, it's what are we gonna do, kids? We're all gonna die, kind of thing.
is super.
Yeah.
Feels, and then the pregnant teacher gets involved in the gunfight and gets a knife in her shoulder.
So there's a particular Old Boy. Speaking of antecedents of this movie,
Old Boy has a fight scene which is a big fight scene where one guy takes on everybody in a narrow hallway, and this is that in movie form.
Yeah.
So I thought it was video game-like as well, but all my video game references are old because I stopped playing video games around 1999.
Right.
So I'm wow, this is just like a side scroller in that there's
It
only
is,
one direction to proceed in, and the limited dimensionality of it kind of like focuses the conflict.
The funny thing is that is really no different in contemporary first-person shooters,
Yeah,
because most of them are defined
just
by
fucking hallways that go in one direction.
yeah,
Essentially,
like they're thinly veiled hallways.
Bioshock particularly.
Yeah,
I see.
in some ways.
Never played
I- I
Bioshock. But the other
Yeah,
thing I thought was video game-like in an interesting way was how if you go straight forward and fight the boss, you get the false ending, and to get the real ending, you have to notice this little insignificant door right before the main boss room.
Yeah,
Kind of
there's
like-
that secret choice just before that.
Yeah, kind of like the level 99 in Bubble Bobble.
Exactly like that. Josh gets that reference now.
I
because
do.
Josh
Yay.
loves Bubble Bobble now.
Yay!
There's so, and that brings us to another video gamey element of this thing, which is the moral choice system, where which ending you get hinges entirely upon like which button you press at the end.
And also the big reveal is that your character was morally compromised from the beginning. That's very Bioshock.
Also very something that's been going through the VGs for a lot of time, but also it's a larger thing, which brings me to one of my questions about this movie, which is you said that it had a message. What?
Oh.
What was that?
Well, so let me go back to the part where you said that Curtis is a video game protagonist, right?
Yes.
Right.
So
Right down to his stubble.
Yes, right down to his stubble. So I feel like the typical action movie protagonist or the typical video game protagonist is this badass who like is really good at killing bad guys. He sacrifices everybody he loves for the success of the rebellion. And then at the end, in the modern Hollywood idiom, he sacrifices his life to beat the big bad guy and then is miraculously alive again afterwards anyway.
Yep.
Like, the guy who sacrifices his life and then turns up alive has been the ending of, like, the last 6 American action movies that I've seen.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say that if you picked any American action movies, you would essentially be correct there.
Yeah. But I feel like the way Curtis is portrayed
Hang on,
in
we've
the
got
film...
to drift slowly down this hill.
Oh, God.
I'm fine.
You munched that guardrail pretty hard.
I didn't hit anything.
So, in this movie, like, it really shows you what a broken person Curtis is. Like, you can't imagine that Curtis being in charge of this train would be any better than Wilford being in charge of this train.
Right.
And it really shows you, like, the human cost of all the people that he's sacrificed to make his rebellion succeed. At the end, he's got, like, nothing left. He's a monster, and he realizes that he's a monster.
Okay.
And
I feel like we should quickly explain for those who don't care about the movie being spoiled. The big ideological moment in this thing is when Curtis, Sad Captain America, I'm sorry, his name is Sad Captain America, reaches the front of the train, and the train's overseer explains to him that the train, much like the planet prior to global warming, is a delicate ecosystem that has to be perfectly balanced, and that the natural order of things on this train requires that there be the underprivileged tail end class and the horrible abuses they suffer, and that for as long as the train is rolling, these things will continue.
Also reveals that Curtis's mentor has been complicit with the whole deal all along, that Curtis was always playing right into their hands, that the messages that Curtis had been receiving were all coming from him, including our other favorite scene in the movie, which
Take
is...
this. It's for you. I just wrote it.
Train?
No, for real. Pull it open. There, I wrote...
You wrote train in here? Yep. It is such a shame that you cannot see that Josh actually followed through and made that pop.
I wrote train on a red piece of tape and then gave it to Isaac. Yes, the end of the end of the movie. This is the scene Isaac was talking about. He hands him one of the final letter. Final letter. In the big dramatic moment where he's utterly shattered Curtis's worldview, he gives Curtis a moment to himself, and he breaks down and cries and falls to his knees, and then he comes back and says, "Take this, Curtis. It's for you. I just wrote it." And he hands him a letter that reads, "Train."
Yep.
Yes. And part of what makes this movie really work for me is that the bad guys are a little bit kooky. Like,
all of them. Yeah.
They're not your typical, like, uber competent, like, unflappably evil dystopian overlord antagonists, right?
There is that guy though, the guy who never fucking dies.
Oh yeah,
and
thank God.
His only line,
mini boss.
His only line is no bullets.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah. I see Franco as being kind of a mirror image of Curtis in that they both become revenge-driven killers. Like, there's a whole sort of the fourth act is both of them being defined by nothing but revenge. So he kind of shows
for the Leonardo DiCaprio-looking guy, the Korean girl.
His boyfriend, according to fan.
Oh, that's his boyfriend. Holy shit.
According to fan theory.
Okay, fair enough.
You do kind of see them snuggling before that. Anyway,
so.
so like,
but that helps me understand that a lot. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. There's a lot of things that you don't catch on the first watch of this movie.
Yeah, this was like definitely a movie that I thought, I need to watch this again to really get what's going on.
There's a ton of subtext you only catch the second time through.
But back to the main event.
The ideological thrust.
What's the actual ideological thrust of the movie?
Well, so I think that Curtis is about ready to agree to Wilford's suggestion at the end.
That he fills his role.
Right.
Yeah.
And
until he sees the kitties.
Yes. Right. Until Yona comes in and reveals that Timmy is under the floor and has become like
Timmy has fallen in the well.
No.
The well of the Industrial Revolution.
They're using the kids to replace for train parts.
Yeah.
They do. There's a little gesture that recurs all throughout the film, which turns out to be a reference to the real fact that children were hired to work in factories because during the Industrial Revolution because only their tiny little hands could fit in.
Yeah.
And repair the machinery.
Yeah.
But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So the Curtis's revolution is going to succeed, but change absolutely nothing. Except possibly maybe he'll bring his friends from the tail up to the front and send everybody from the front back to the tail. Like the scene where they're eating sushi and he forces Minister Mason to eat the protein block instead kind of makes you think, is this just going to be one of those revolutions where the head and the tail switch places and nothing
is
actually
like
changed?
All revolutions?
Like all revolutions. Almost all revolutions.
And the movie foreshadows that a lot. Like when like just after they take Minister Mason hostage and say, like, don't keep fighting or we'll kill this guy, not Minister Mason, but the Japanese guy or Korean guy.
Right.
They take one of them.
The Japanese guy. No, it's very important that all of the fancy people in this movie are either white or Japanese, and that is not true of the people who are not fancy. But anyway,
right. And then like just after that happens, and Minister Mason reveals herself to be evil by not giving a shit whether or not they kill this person. Like they take Curtis's sidekick hostage, and
Edgar.
Edgar. They take Edgar hostage, and Curtis has to let them kill him so that his revolution will succeed, and that very much sends the message that they are the same.
Yeah, and the weight of that decision to let Edgar die is something you only appreciate at the end when you realize how much Edgar means to Curtis.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things in this movie where they don't show you the full meaning of something right away. You'll catch it on the second time through, or you'll put it together in your head afterwards.
Right.
Which is
like.
Not how action movies are made.
Right.
How action movies are made is out of a book, and in that book it says if there's a theme in the movie, you have to have the main character say the theme at least twice, probably 3 times.
Yeah.
Once in Act 1, once in Act 3, and once in Act 5, where it will have gained a slightly more meaning because of all the
this
context.
This movie does do it
right.
in Act 5. The main villain literally says the line, "The train is the world, and we the humanity."
Yes.
Which is definitely... That's hitting the nail on the head right there.
Yeah.
But I do agree. Like, something the movie...
No, the hero gets to say that. The fact that the villain got to do that is actually...
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But something I do appreciate structurally about the film is that it is all built, like... It's all built for this train, if you see what I mean, in a very deep way. Like, you never see a train that's further ahead than Curtis has reached. So you're kind of discovering it all with him.
And I love that because to me science fiction is a lot about that feeling of discovering a world that is rarely captured well in a movie, but in this one the fact that revealing the physical environment is also revealing the way the society works. And the fact that so many of the train cars are just like a shocking revelation in that, like, oh my god, everything's green in this one. Everything's blue in this one.
It reminds me of that. Oh fuck, never mind. It reminds me of a Chinese movie whose name that I can't remember. Who did something lovely with colors in a scene.
Was it like Hero or like Flying Daggers?
Yeah, it was Hero.
Hero
Flying Daggers was terrible. It was Hero, which was pretty good.
Anyway, to finish my thought, so Curtis is about to basically give up and accept that he's the guy who's going to keep this horrible system going after Wilfred retires. And a big part of that is because Wilfred has demolished the ideal of Gilliam that Curtis has been holding in his head the whole time.
His mentor.
Mentor, yeah. So it looks like it's going to essentially the false ending until Yona runs in and she's like, Curtis, look what's under the floor. It's Timmy, that kid you promised to rescue when his mom was dying. And at that point, Curtis looks around and he's like, fuck you, Wilfred. He's realized that, first of all, Wilfred's whole ideology is based on the fact that this train is a sustainable system. And the fact that he's having to replace pieces of the engine with children basically proves that he's full of shit and the train is not a sustainable system. It's breaking down around them.
Right.
If they stay within the closed system of the train, there is no hope for the future. It's just delaying the inevitable. And at horrible, horrible human cost. And so Curtis is like, fuck this. I'm going to go with the unknown. I'm going to go with Namgung's plan. Even though Namgung's plan, I have no idea what's going to happen if we blow up that door. But it's better than this. And Namgung, to me, is the real hero of the movie. Because
yes, I would say that's accurate.
He's the only guy who ever looks out the window.
Yeah.
He's the only guy who is paying attention to the big picture and the real problem, which is that the world is frozen, and realizing that there may be a way to survive outside. He's the only one who's looking outside the system at the real problem. And so by the climax of the movie is basically Curtis's idea, which is let's have a revolution, running up against Wilfred's idea, which is let's keep this system going forever, running up against Namgung's idea, which is let's get the fuck off of this stupid train. And due to the decisions that all three of them make at the climax and the way those decisions interact, they end up going with Namgung's idea. And what that says to me is it's also kind of important to me that Curtis dies and doesn't come back to life.
Yeah.
That it's he's the guy who can win the revolution for you, but he's not the guy you want running things after the revolution. Yeah. He's just too damaged. And it's kind of he redeems himself by sacrificing his body, literally, to rescue Timmy and Yona. He's the white action movie protagonist who's instead of, saving the day at the end, he's well, I'm gonna kill myself so that you kids might have a chance of living in a world without this bullshit.
Right.
And
of course, outside of the train, they find a polar bear.
Yes. Yeah. A symbol of hope.
Yes, because a polar bear is an apex predator, which implies that there's enough of an ecosystem going on to sustain an apex predator. But really, what the ending says to me is that there's no substitute for actual nature, right? You can pretend that you can live in an artificial, self-contained system, but you're just fooling yourself. And in the end, there's no substitute for keeping the real ecosystem functional, because that's the real world, and that's what ultimately sustains everybody. And your bullshit ideology has to give way when it's faced with, the real world of ice ages and polar bears.
Great. You thought.
Do that again. That was amazing. Anyway, continue, please.
I'm glad you walked us through that, because that is a much more complete and also more charitable reading of the film than Isaac and I were immediately able to generate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there are a couple of things about the movie that I found quite baffling, and I think that
the fish.
The fish that he slips on during the action scene?
No. That I did not find baffling at all.
They're all dipping their axe in this fish, and it's I saw this great GIF on Tumblr, which was the axe guys holding the fish, and underneath it says, "The moment when you realize the movie is about to get very, very Korean."
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
I basically just read that as
I was like, okay, I know the directorial mode that we're in here.
yeah.
So there are things. From a technical perspective, there are things about this movie that are masterful.
Oh yes.
And there are things about this movie that are
Stupid.
noticeably bad.
Okay, cool.
There are directorial sequences which are astounding.
The set design is so amazing.
The set design is fantastic.
Like all these spaces reinterpreted, like reshaped so that they can fit inside train cars, and it was actually shot inside of train cars. They built all these sets inside train cars. That's so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the action choreography was generally really cool because you never fucking know who's about to get violent.
Absolutely, no. It reminded me a lot of Children of Men in that. It just like the violence was actually quite sparing given like the magnitude of it, and it was, as a result, it was incredibly visceral. It did a very good job of capturing the fog of war, particularly during the machete fight.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a fight that takes place in a pitch dark room. It's a train car with a window, but they turn off the lights and it goes through a tunnel. So all the bad guys put on these night vision goggles.
That was great.
This is one of those dichotomous scenes for me because some of it is great. Because there's these first-person shots from the from the perspective of the butchers, essentially the guys in night vision goggles, the bad guys, and like you see the rebels like swinging their axes in the darkness, like completely shitting themselves, and that's just great and horrifying. But then like later in the scene, there's a night vision shot with the same like effects imposed on the screen to establish that you're looking through goggles, but of things that none of these characters would reasonably looking at, like a close up on the what's her name's face?
Mason.
Yeah, Chancellor Mason. Is it Chancellor?
Minister Mason. I thought it was
Minister.
because the guy with the goggles was turning around to look at Minister Mason for instructions, because she makes that gesture like, "What are you looking at me for?"
It's before that. It's
okay.
right. It's like right under her chin. It's
I
like
know
a 3 or 4 second
shot
of her like grinning and looking at the fight. And I mean, it's a great shot. But for me, I mean, I'm all about diegetics when it comes to this sort of thing.
Oh, I see. So
was like
that broke your immersion a little bit then.
Yes, I mean, there's a more serious example of this later on where they're watching the hilarious documentary about how the train got made.
Yes, and baby Wilford is like, "When I grow up, I'm going to live on a train forever."
Yes, he says, "I'm going to ride a train forever," and this just really made me crack up. Like, there's the video editing inside the documentary, not the movie, but inside the documentary, like, does this creepy 3-piece staggered zoom on the kid's face to emphasize how creepy that line is. And, like, it could have been the actual film camera that did that, but it was definitely, I went back and checked, it was definitely the actual, like, documentary inside the movie that emphasized how creepy that line was.
Right. So it's like they're winking at you a little bit too much right there.
So I think the larger... I think that like the very good thing about this movie is that if you scratch any given decision, you can usually see the idea behind it, and the idea is a solid one. Like the thing with the fish and the axes and that stuff. It's like you can say, "Oh, whoa, it's wacky. It's like it's Asian," or you could say, "Well, you know, if we're looking at what this movie is actually talking about in terms of class and the way that class perpetuates itself, part of these like." Particularly in the upper classes, these like bizarre rituals that become, you know, sort of like that begin to feed on themselves are totally part of what keeps that class together, and which allows them to treat the natives like natives. If you know what I mean,
Wilfordism is on its way to becoming a religion.
Yeah, and it's not, but it's not just the religious element. It felt the rabble coming up against the Axemen felt like a native, like a colonized people, like trying to charge a group of of British soldiers with muskets who are who are dressed up like idiots, but we're about to kill you. It's like, but that is the major issues with the film for me were about tone.
It's hard to tell sometimes whether it's intentionally hilarious.
I mean, I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's great. And, I would recommend it for that reason. It was never dull.
And I do love that kind of meta joke. There are ways in which it undermined the movie, like in a thing. It's like, are we supposed to take the tech element of this seriously or not? Well, what's the prison? We keep them in drawers.
Yeah,
just drawers, filing drawers.
That was great.
It is. Like, that's very clever.
It on a tray.
It's like, it is great, but on the other hand, it's also ridiculous.
Yes.
Right.
It
was like the balance between the goofy and the sublime. That's a very difficult line to walk, and I think that it was successful in part. Like,
and that kind of supports your earlier statement that it was kind of like an anime.
Yes, that's exactly it. Like the lady in yellow, for example.
Yeah,
basically everything about her.
The tape measure lady.
The tape measure lady was just like, this is, you should have thought twice about this. If you know what I mean. There are other more basic problems, like the characterization is very, very thin. The dialogue is
clearly translated from Korean, and to me it feels like it was designed to be easy to stuff into subtibles, which results in some overly banal statements.
There are dialogic rhythms in the movie, and this feeds into the problem again with there were definitely moments in this movie where I didn't know whether I was laughing at or with it.
Yes.
The
train is the world, we the humanity is an example of one such line. And another one I remember when the security designer has the last couple of cigarettes in the world. Someone in the background actually says, "I don't believe it. Cigarettes have been extinct for more than 10 years," which is one of those things no one would ever say.
You would expect to see it. The movie felt occasionally like it was being dubbed in English from English.
Yes.
If you understand what I mean. The ragtag band of Wowdy Webbles were pulled from central casting. I enjoyed that he didn't kill the black woman first.
Yeah.
Just second.
Last.
Well, next to last.
Yeah.
No, the magical Asian child survived. Why was she precognitive?
Well, it paid off. I remembered it paid off at the end of the movie. It paid off so that she could open up the floor and reveal that there's a kid under there.
No, I mean I know why plot-wise, but why was that?
Yeah,
why did that happen?
And it's so plain too. Like she predicts something, and then a few scenes later, Sad Captain America asks her, "Oh, you're having a hard time hearing us?"
Yeah.
Let's pause and try and feel this out.
All right.
It's probably a connection issue on one of our ends. We're back.
Okay,
Please
so you were
saying
about Yona being precognitive.
Right. I'm trying to get this hilarious line out, which is that she does something precognitive, and then Sad Captain America asks her 2 scenes later, "Are you clairvoyant?" Like it's
like it's just a thing.
Yeah.
That might be true in this world,
Are you of drinking age?
Who knows?
Are you one of those clairvoyants?
Yeah.
I mean, which it is a little. So that there and that is one of those things that adds to a realm of general cartooniness.
Right.
It's like once we find out the backstory for what's his face, the boy sidekick, Edgar, it's like, cool. Where did his ridiculous accent come from? if he's an orphan who was raised from a baby by Sad Captain America, where did the fuck did that accent come from?
He was raised in the Irish car of the back of the train.
That makes perfect sense.
Also, another thing I need to point out as a major problem I had with the movie was that after Edgar died, the movie still was like, well, he still needs to have a sidekick. So they introduced this Latino-looking guy who has no lines whatsoever, just so that he can help out in some action scenes. And
he's a mute, right? I mean, he's got those tattoos that he showed. He wrote like "surrender or die" on his arm.
That's true.
Which was very bad. Oh,
the first collision of the trip. I'm just gonna have to push this guy aside. Excuse me, buddy.
You're pushing him into the ravine.
I'm sorry you couldn't see that, Jono.
That's brutal. That would be great to screenshot. That should be our channel.
Yeah,
shot. That one.
There it is. I got arrested.
The mute guy is named Gray, and there's a lot of fan speculation about him. He has the name Gilliam tattooed over his heart. If you look closely,
right. I got the idea that
him and Gilliam are like
conspiracy.
very close in the scene when they're getting ready to leave on the rebellion.
Yeah.
And he's like, the way everybody cheers him on when he's running, like some kind of people's champion.
Yeah.
And there's fan speculation that he's either Gilliam's adopted son or gay lover, and that he might have cut his own tongue out to feed to somebody, or he might have had his tongue cut out as punishment.
Okay.
Which makes it a little more significant that
his in-movie characterization consists of the fact that he's good at punching people.
Right. Yes.
And that is sufficient, but it's a little...
It does feel a bit cynical that they replace the sidekick with another one who just happens to be unable to say anything.
You're yawning, dude. You need to take a nap.
Well, yeah. Anyway, all of these things that you say are valid criticisms.
Yeah. They clearly feel a little bit like nitpicking. I mean, these are small things, and like I'm not the nerd who is like,
absolutely.
This is the
It affected my viewing of the film such that I couldn't tell if I was looking at a good film or not until I was done watching it and decided that yes, it was a good film.
Right.
But it really added to the whole, the chaotic, like, what the hell am I seeing element.
Yeah, which was definitely one of the enjoyable things about watching it.
Yeah.
And so A+ for that. Actually, there are two criticisms I have of it, which are less hand wavy.
Right.
One of which is that the pacing is a little wonkalid, and
it's over 2 hours long.
Their exposition dumps, which is not ideal.
As much as I love the idea that he learns about the train by moving through it, there are bits where the only way they could figure out how to do that was to stop everything and explain for a while.
Which is a movie like The Raid, for example, sort of manages to balance that a little bit more. I mean, it's part of like the feeling of it being a beautiful mess, but that is a definite criticism I have. The other one is that when I walked out of the movie, I had the feeling that it's like this is a movie that is very pro-revolution, but it's also in that, I mean, and it's both pro-revolution and critical of revolution, as you were saying, John. Right. It's like, it's not worth anything if like these same old people come out on top. And so, we got to look to the children's, who are uncorrupted and psychic for some reason.
Some uncomfortable shades of Bioshock Infinite, maybe not as bad, but...
Little Timmy, for Christ's sake. But it's also a movie that Pol Pot would have liked, if you know what I mean.
Whoa. That's a pretty serious statement. You want to back that up?
Yeah. The moral freighting of the movie seems to be, as you said, it's like, in the primacy of ecology, and in the willingness to sacrifice every single human life, bar like Adam and Eve there, with the polar bears, because everything is so deeply, deeply fucked that we have to revert to some kind of natural order, that are meddling with the natural world and and science, essentially knowledge, technology, is so much the tool of evil that we have to destroy this entire mechanism and start from scratch, is pretty much Maoist doctrine. And I think that, like, in a movie where the casualty rate for the human race is 99.99%, and this is presented as the better option, leaves me feeling a little weird.
Right, especially when you consider that the inescapable system is income inequality. But the bad guy, Wilfred, his thing felt pretty convincing while I was watching it in the movie, but then when I thought about it, I was like, wait a minute, no, if you try to apply this to the real world, this is nonsense, because there's more than enough to go around. Like, it's not so that, like, distributing wealth a little bit more equally would fuck everything.
Right.
That's just not the case. And that's, like, the entire... I mean, the entire movie is kind of a contrivance to make that the case. But that's not really applicable, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, there's a part of me who... The part of me that is a wishy-washy, incrementalist liberal... and which is a part of me that is the part of me that determines most of my political stances in life, finds this, like, you know, the movie, I've in terms of ideology, movies which go right up to the sort of the ugly heart of revolution and reveal it to be, you know, just a way of perpetuating the system of inequality, and then veer off in a different direction.
My truck driver's falling asleep.
Yeah, I told you, bro. You need to.
There hasn't been one.
It's just been a relatively boring conversation. What can I say? Which it hasn't. This has been a fantastic conversation. We're totally going to take the whole episode doing this, but like, there are ways of. It's like, you know, there's sort of the Utena model of being like, well, the only way to win this fight is to withdraw from the system, versus the only way to win this fight is to blow the system and absolutely everybody else up.
Yeah.
And it seemed very strange to me in a movie which had already, like, demonstrated that whose very presence is the extinction of all life on Earth due to an attempt to disrupt the status quo.
Yeah. The whole disrupting the balance theme is very central to this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let us talk over you this whole time about why we think this movie has a giant problem in it, Joon-ho. If you,
that's cool.
I'm curious to hear your reactions to all these thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid reading, and I think that's a really interesting perspective that I hadn't thought about as much. So I'm gonna present a slightly alternate take on the ending.
Okay.
I'm not saying that yours is wrong.
Yeah,
but,
nor am I saying that this reading makes the movie bad.
Yeah.
I'm merely that, you know, but please continue.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about this movie is that we can have this conversation, right?
Absolutely, no, it is a fantastic film, and I would basically recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, so Namgoong's plan is not to destroy the train, right? It's to blast the door open.
Yes.
Right? And his bomb does not destroy the train. His bomb accidentally sets off an avalanche. So
he was he talked earlier in the film about how he noticed that the snow had gone brittle and that maybe just one big bang was all that was needed to shift it. You know, I don't think he was completely taken by surprise by this.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although I read that more as just like foreshadowing on the meta level, rather than something that the character was thinking.
Josh and I burst out laughing when the actual avalanche happened. It was like, this metaphor has become hilariously literal all of a sudden.
Yes.
But anyway, yes.
Yes. But so it's kind of like, you can read the ending as a tragedy, also, as the unintended consequence of going through with Namgoong's plan, right? Mm-hmm. That, like, having almost everybody on the train die is not what anybody was trying to do. It was just the result of combination of several decisions with some bad luck. So you can read it as essentially a tragedy there about human nature. But you can also definitely read it as saying, like, fuck yeah, let's destroy everything technological and go back to nature with just two people to start over.
I mean, the movie is so metaphorical in nature that I wouldn't really be prepared to assign any part of it as incidental, if you see what I mean.
Right, but I mean, I'd also be hesitant to privilege one particular reading of it or the other, because I think part of the genius of the film is that, like, there in the beginning, you know, you can read the we tried to fix global warming and destroyed humanity, basically as as supporting either of these interpretations.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
And the ending is very ambiguous. It's right in the balance between hope and despair. I think it's Like you can
That
choose.
polar bear was unambiguous.
As long as you can sustain your disbelief about the polar bear, which, I thought that strained credulity just a little too much, and it gets back into nitpicky territory, but oh my god, Isaac and I just cracked up when we saw that polar bear. But no,
Yeah,
I appreciate that the polar bear is essentially a metaphorical agent, and
an apex predator.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
That was great.
Yeah. So anyway, I think the ending is ambiguous. I also think the character of Gilliam is very ambiguous.
Right, yeah. I on my partial rewatch, I noticed him, like, a big scene, I think, is... A big scene for the second viewing is when he tells said Captain America not to let Wilfred speak when he reaches the front of the train.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He wouldn't have said that if he was just what Wilfred said he was, just a co-conspirator.
Yeah.
But then again,
So-
if the plan was the plan was ultimately to have Curtis replace Wilford.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
maybe
I
Gilliam
think
thought that would
that
be better.
I think that Gilliam kind of represents like hope for doing the least harm within the system, and that I think he thinks that by not letting Wilford indoctrinate Curtis, it will lead to Curtis being a more humane Wilford 2.0.
Yeah.
But Gilliam is very ambiguous. You don't really know what he wants. So that's another place where there's many possible readings.
Absolutely. So we're getting nearer to the end of our truck train at this point.
Okay.
We're near the front of the truck train.
Yeah. And the glorious office note paper will be duly distributed. Little Timmy. Anyway, there are a couple of other things. Once again, I want to like say there are a lot of awesome references to their antecedents in this movie and resonances with other things. Joon-ho, that you might want to check out.
Sure.
I'll say The Raid Redemption again. It's a fantastic movie.
I wrote that down.
It's martial artsy in the extreme.
I didn't talk about it much. A movie that this reminded me of a lot, in a lot of ways, is Looper.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
12 Monkeys.
Oh, I've seen 12 Monkeys.
The fact that this character is named Gilliam is not is definitely not a coincidence.
Homage, yeah.
Yeah, and
Old Boy, if that wasn't pretty obvious.
yeah, you should if you're checking out the other movies by this director, you should also.
He did not do Old Boy.
I know he didn't.
Okay.
But
I
did the
saw a
host.
little bit of Old Boy, and it really put me off. Just,
it's Old Boy is definitely a nihilistic film, and like
Yeah.
a uncomplicatedly nihilistic film, but it has a lot of the same sort of completely wackadoodle Korean, extreme violence, which is not what you're in this for.
that's not what I'm looking for. No.
Yeah. And I think it would definitely be worth your time to maybe check out some Let's Plays of BioShock Infinite, just because it's a fascinating.
Bioshock Infinite is the terrible version of this movie. in a
Yeah,
lot of
it's
ways.
and it's just a fascinating document.
Yeah, I heard your guys' previous Trucks cast about Bioshock Infinite, and unfortunately a lot of it went over my head since I haven't played the game or really know
Right.
much
Something
about the
we
story.
gotta be careful of.
Yeah, well, we as we've spent this entire episode talking about this movie, at least there's a fandom for this movie, and there are people who I know, I know a couple of people who are viewers of this who would really enjoy this movie. I
Yeah,
think.
hopefully we'll just tag the movie.
So
Yeah,
we were
and
unable. Go
I
ahead.
want to help this movie succeed because of like the story behind the making of it.
Oh, yes.
The fact that its American producers didn't want to let it be released until they had like cut 20 minutes out of it and dubbed over all the foreign language parts. And the director was just like, no, fuck you.
Right.
And so as a result, it got a release with zero publicity and zero marketing budget.
And only got to be in art house movies.
Yeah,
theaters.
tiny release. So I kind of want it to succeed, just because it's like
you're
one of
getting
the
so
very
much better
few
at that.
original science fiction movies in this land of endless series and remakes. I would really like it to be successful.
Oh, dude,
so
what-
I encourage people to give them money.
Oh, Jono, watch Moon if you haven't.
Oh, I love Moon.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're at the end here. So
We are.
final
We
farewells.
didn't get a chance to talk about anything other than this movie, so I think that we should definitely have Jono on again for another
Yay.
Trucks Run to talk about more of his very wide range of interests.
Yes.
And
Yeah. I would love to.
we can't keep you now, unfortunately, but
That's fine. But yeah, next time maybe we could talk about science, which is the other proposed topic.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, look forward to that, everybody.
Okay, go see this movie.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
Bye.